great job. I have to follow that. I hate it. I never like following our great First Lady because it makes me look not so good. I want to thank all of you for being here. It's amazing, actually. And thank you, Melania. We're truly blessed to have such a First Lady. She's been so popular. She did a movie, it became number one. She then went to streaming, it became number one. And I say there's only room, remember this, for one star in a family, so I better get rid of that. That's not so good. But she's been amazing, and people love her, as you can see by the results, and that was a big thing today. Congratulations on that vote. She had a bipartisan vote. I should use you for some of the things I want to try and pass. But I join Melania in congratulating the House of Representatives on passing the Fostering the Future Act, which is a big deal, and this afternoon to modernize foster care, an issue close to the First Lady's heart, and hopefully it will quickly pass in the Senate. I'm sure it will. It's great. It's a great thing. And I want to thank everybody. We have a lot of senators. We have a lot of Congress people. And I want to thank you all. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to the White House this evening for a very special annual tradition, the Congressional Picnic. It's been going on for many years. And we're joined by many of the members of the House and the Cabinet, Senate. And I just want to say a special hello to the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He's going to go down as one of the great speakers. We've done a lot together. We've done a lot. Where are you, Mike? Where are you, Mike? Hi, Mike. There he is. He's a great guy, actually, and he's worked so hard. I want to thank also John Thune, who's worked so hard, and he's a terrific person. He really is a terrific person. And we have a lot of things to pass, but one of the things we did pass was a great, big, beautiful bill, and that covered a lot of territory. I want to tell you, we said, let's do it all in one time, and it was 4 years worth in one bill. Everyone said that couldn't be done, and I want to congratulate and thank the Senate, the House, for the unbelievable job. And while there are too many members in the House and Senate, I see half of you right here, and I'd like to introduce everyone, but I want to let people enjoy themselves tonight. So, but we have so many represented this evening. It will be something very special to remember that all of us here tonight continue a priceless tradition. This really is a great tradition. We represent the oldest and most extraordinary constitutional republic on the face of the earth, and a special privilege and a unique responsibility it is. It's really something very special. I'm standing here and I'm looking at our great American flag, and it's hard to believe, but I put that in 2 months ago, that I put one on the other side. You know, this is actually, in theory, this would be, I consider them both, we have two fronts. I've never figured out, nobody else has either, since if you think about it, 1792, nobody's figured out which is the front and which is the back of the White House. So when I'm speaking here, I say the front, and when I speak over there, I say the front. It actually has two fronts, and I put two flags up. And it's a great pole, and it's a beautiful flag, and it's amazing that it wasn't up before. We have another flag slightly smaller on the top of the White House, but it's a little bit on the smaller side. But everybody loves that pole. It's a beauty, and it represents so much. And I want to thank the company that put it up to the best. I think they make the best. It's hard to believe I have so many different developments all over the world. I always like putting the flag up, and I know a lot about flagpoles, and that's the best flagpole there is. Okay, so congratulations. We have two of them. We got actually two for the price of one. We negotiated a tough deal, but finally we have a really representative flagpole and flag up in front of our White House, so that's good. I also want to recognize the incredible congressional spouses, families, and children who make enormous sacrifices so that their loved ones can serve, so that their loved ones can get beat up by the fake news, so that their loved ones can also beat up the enemy. And they do that. They do. They're warriors. It's not easy, and I want to give them, the spouses, a very special hand today. Thank you. Thank you, darling. Thank you very much. Thank you. You put up with a lot. It's not easy. But on the eve of the 250th year, there's so much for our country to celebrate regarding the party. We have a party that's...
This settlement check completely changed my life.
Really at a point that I don't think we've ever been at. And America's thriving, America's winning, and America's respected, perhaps like it has never been respected before. If you go back 2 years, we were not respected. We were a dead country. I'll tell you what, we were a dead country. And today we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. There's nobody even close. And I don't know if you saw the numbers today, but the stock market's at an all-time high. We had 67 all-time highs, so we've been here for a little bit more than a year now, and we had 67 all-time highs. And I want to say that in our first term, we finished the term out, despite COVID and all the other things, we had really an amazing period of time, and we finished at the highest point in the history of the stock market. And now we're blowing it away. We're blowing everything away, and we're going to end that war very quickly. They want to make a deal so badly. They're tired of this. This should have happened for 47 years. Somebody should have done something about it, and it's going to happen, and it's going to happen fast. And you're going to see oil prices plummet. They're going to come down. There's so much oil out there. They're going to come plummeting down. But even with that, the stock market's at an all-time high. Jobless claims recently hit the lowest level since 1969, the best numbers since 1969, and more Americans are working today than at any time in the history of our country. Think of that. And we have a war. We have something happening that we just hit. It's very interesting. 2.5 months ago, we hit the best numbers that we've ever hit as a country. Jobs, the best. Everything was the best. Stock market, the highest. And I called my people in. I called them in. I said, congratulations, everybody, but we're going to have to make a little journey down to a place called Iran. We have to stop them. They have nuclear on their mind, and we're not going to let them have a nuclear weapon. And we've done a hell of a job. And I think we're going to be finished with that very quickly, and they won't have a nuclear weapon. And hopefully we're going to get it done in a very nice manner. Factory construction, as you heard today, also is up. Housing starts are up, and consumer spending is up. All things that we have an economy. People aren't seeing it yet. When we inherited, when we started, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country. And we actually had, just before the war, before the energy forced other things up, but up or down, we had the best numbers. We had inflation was at 1.6% for the last 3 months just prior to the war. And now you're going to see numbers like that again. We inherited high prices, and we got the prices down, and we got them down to numbers that in some cases people have not seen before. But think of it, inflation at 1.6%. Manufacturing right now is booming. American companies are purchasing core capital goods at the highest amounts ever in the history of our country. Our previously wide open border is now the most secure border in the history of the United States of America. And last year, remember, we inherited a mess. And last year, we had the largest drop in murder rate ever recorded to the lowest level in 125 years. That's the year 1900. Think of that. And working alongside many of you, and you are unbelievable, the senators, the cabinet members. We have such a great cabinet, and all of the congressmen and women. You're the most incredible people, but working alongside of many of you here, we passed that very important. And again, remember, I went to John and I went to Mike. I went to a lot of the senators and congressmen and women, and I said, we can try and do this at one time, get 4 years worth. That's why we call it the great, big, beautiful bill. We can do it at one time, give it a shot, but everybody says it's impossible to get approved. Well, we got 4 years worth of goodies approved in a period of time, and in a period of time that they said would be impossible. And we're lucky we did. And it's gotten a little bit harder as time goes by. In fact, the only one that gets things approved now are Melania and her friends. She gets them approved bipartisan. I'm going to talk to her later. I'm going to say, what are you doing? But it's great. It's great stuff. But what we did do is we got something done, and we're getting a lot approved. We're getting a lot. You're going to be seeing that too. You've been watching it. Amazing with really small majorities. We've gotten record-setting numbers. No tax on tips and no tax on Social Security. All of the things. Think of this. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. And that's just the start. A deduction, you buy a car and you get a deduction for the first time on the interest you're paying on your loan. If you're borrowing money, you take out a loan, you get a deduction. It's never happened before. We have so many different things. One other thing I have to say, because it's affected so many people, estate taxes or the death tax. You love your children.
Open a Chime checking account in 2 minutes, and we'll spot you.
You want to pass on your estate to your children. Well, in the old days, meaning not so long ago, your children would have to go out and borrow tremendous amounts of money to go and take care of the farm or the small business, whatever it may be. But it especially affected those in small business, but more than anything, farmers. And they'd go out. The children would go out, borrow money from their bank, wouldn't be able to pay it back. Bad things happened to them. Many of them couldn't handle life, actually. And there's no estate tax farm on your small business. Nobody thought that was possible. So if you love your children, you can leave your business to your children. You can leave your farm to your children, and they'll be very happy. Now, if you don't love your children, don't bother. Then it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is just a big waste of time. But if you love, think of it, you have no death tax, you have no estate tax. You can leave it to your children, and we love that. It was so important to me. We've restored the American strength on the world stage. We're respected all over the world. You might have seen, I was in China a few days ago with President Xi, and there was some display. We had a great time, but we also got a lot of business, a lot of great business for our farmers with soybeans, record purchases of soybeans and lots of other things. And they're buying many Boeing airplanes, and they're buying a lot of other things too. We had a great relationship. I've always had a great relationship with President Xi. Together, on a bipartisan basis, we passed the Lincoln Riley Act to get...
Y'all heard Trump, man. We respect it all around the world, bro. They respect us all around the world. That's why I fuck with Trump, bro. Because, man, come on, man. That's why we safe. That's why y'all able to go to sleep. That's why them people ain't over here doing nothing to us, because they respect Trump, man. So I don't know why y'all don't respect Trump, man. Shout out to Trump, man. The coldest white boy I know, man.
Dangerous criminal aliens off our streets. We love Lincoln. We passed the Genius Act to keep America at the forefront of finance and new technology, and working with Melania and the group. Congress passed the Take It Down Act to protect our nation's children. So that was something. And everyone here tonight has a lot to look forward to, so that in the coming months, we're going to have some very amazing events. One of them is going to be right there where you're standing. It's good. The hardest ticket I have never seen anybody want anything so much as people want those tickets. It's a one of a kind UFC. That's
Hey, y'all heard Trump though? Like Trump say, man, y'all see me out there in China, man. We got a bunch of business done. You know what I'm saying, man? Check them out. Like, y'all seen me out there in China, man. Y'all seen me chilling with the president, man. We got them soybeans, so we gonna be able to come back and grow shit. Nigga, they trying to buy some planes and shit from us. So I was really up there taking care of business, man. They respect us all around the world, man. Shout out to Trump, man. Y'all seen me up there in China chilling, dog. Man, Trump done went to China. I want to go to China now. You know what I'm telling you? Because they done already showed, yeah, look how they treated Trump when Trump went up there. Man, I need to go to China, goddamn it. I know they gonna roll out the red carpet for me. You know what I'm telling? They roll out the red carpet for him. Shit, why not me? Shit, come on, man. Shout out to Trump for bridging the gap. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to China. China, I'm on the goddamn way. Yeah, I want to go to Tokyo and all that shit, man. I'm on the goddamn way, man. You know what I'm saying? They said it take goddamn 24 hours to get out there. So whenever I get out there, that's gonna be my new residence for the next 20 years. Cause I'd be damned if I get on another plane for another 24 hours. Goddamn it. But I'm on the way, China. Real
Going to
talk,
be something, USC event on the South Lawn. Right there, we're going to build an arena. It's going to hold probably, I would say, 4,000, 5,000. The great Dana White is putting it on. You know, we'll get it up to the max. And behind you in the park, the beautiful park, beautiful open piece of land, we're going to have anywhere from 75,000 to 100,000 people, all free of charge. We're building 8 giant screens back there. So we have a small arena here that we're building, never happened before. And in the back, we're going to have close to 100,000 people watching the fight. They're going to be all championship fights. It's going to be great. We also have, as you know, the Indy. Roger Penske is doing the Indy around the Capitol, and that'll be in August. That's going to be unbelievable. They've been trying to, he said he's been trying to do that for 25 years. He's made 129 trips to Washington. He was never able to do it. Then he met me. One trip took a half an hour, and we got it done. And it's going to be fantastic. And we have then, of course, FIFA. Johnny. Good old Johnny. He's great. He's doing a fantastic job. Johnny Infantino. We have the FIFA World Cup and our great American State Fair on the National Mall and the
Never did.
Thank you, Mr. Grama. I see my time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's absolutely no question that racial discrimination existed in our country, and in many places, people would argue that it still does. And so we had all kinds of ways to keep black people from voting. We had poll taxes, we had literacy tests, we had, I think some places even required them to count how many jelly beans were in a jar. All kinds of ways to keep black people from voting. This happened. I don't think anybody can deny that that was going on. And as far as I'm concerned, there is a pattern now of voter suppression going on in our country right now. And the Calais decision just plays into that by pretty much gutting the Voting Rights Act, which, by the way, was reaffirmed many times in a bipartisan way in acknowledging that this kind of racial discrimination occurred, and that as a democratic country where everybody has an equal vote, that's not tolerable. But suddenly it's A-OK just because the Supreme Court says so. No, it's not the entire Supreme Court. It's a 63 majority, which I consider to be basically an out-of-control Supreme Court majority where there is a pattern of this kind of decisions out of this court. So just because this court says so doesn't mean I agree with them. So meanwhile, there is voter suppression going on. You have an attorney general who sued at least 29 states to get these states to turn over their voter rolls. Why? What does the Department of Justice, what does the executive branch want to do with all this voter information? Up to no good, I would say. There's this huge push to pass the SAVE Act. It's more Save Trump Act. And what does that act do? It would require millions and millions, all of us who are registered to vote, suddenly we will have to show proof of citizenship, either through a birth certificate or a passport. Millions of people don't have either. Married people who take their partner's name will not have a name that matches their birth certificate. So what are they going to do? There are going to be millions of people who are not even going to register to vote. And you think Trump doesn't know that? Of course he does. That's why he wants the SAVE Act to be enacted. That's why the Republicans would like to see the SAVE Act enacted, because they know that millions of people will be literally disenfranchised by not even being able to allow to vote. And then with this regime, once you do vote, they will challenge your vote as they did in the last elections. So voter suppression is going on. It's very reminiscent to the kind of stuff that was going on that the Voting Rights Act was intended to address, to fix. And now you have a Supreme Court that says, oh, never mind all of that, never mind all of that history. And over 3 cases, they succeeded in gutting the Voting Rights Act. And don't tell me that the provisions of the Voting Rights Act still exist in a way that is pretty much unenforceable, because racial gerrymandering is going to be okay unless the legislative body that does the gerrymandering says, oh, by the way, we intend to racially discriminate. Are you crazy? You think that let's say legislators are going to be that overt about it? Of course not. So you have a Voting Rights Act that you claim is still intact. Please, give me a break. I have a question for Mr. Cox. Last weekend, thousands of people, and apparently you were among them, gathered to protest the Supreme Court's gutting of the Voting Rights Act. The central locations for these protests were Montgomery and Selma, Alabama, and both significant sites in American civil rights history. Mr. Cox, can you put this current moment into historical context for us? For instance, why is this moment reminiscent of when the last Congressman, John Lewis, who many of us consider a friend and hero, led over 600 peaceful protesters across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama?
Thank you, Senator Hirono, for that question. I think it's reminiscent and reflects the fact that the Voting Rights Act was not given to us. It was not bestowed on us. It really came from the people. And the joke I'm sort of making is that Justice O'Connor used to say there were more lawyers in D.C. than people. I think we sometimes feel that way in D.C. Or on the Hill. Lawyers are at the center of the universe, and that's just not true. If we're going to climb out of this destruction of the Voting Rights Act, the penultimate destruction of our democracy, is going to require the people. And quite frankly, we're being gaslit. We have a Supreme Court, we have allies of the Supreme Court and allies of the Calais case saying discrimination is over. Obviously not true. We have folks on the ground showing and discussing with us that law enforcement are at the polling places. We have folks not only confused, but being discriminated against right now. And I have to say that to ignore the fact that the people are demanding that Congress respond, that Congress restore the effects test that has been gutted and taken out by Calais would be a mistake, because folks understand and know what is happening outside in the real world. They know, particularly Black voters know, that they aren't going to return to the 1800s and what we all experienced, or our ancestors experienced, that led us to the Voting Rights Act in the first place.
There is so much more to say, but I fear my time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would point out that
Good afternoon, everybody. How you guys doing? Good. I've got my sheet here. So I know call on. Most importantly, do not call on.
All right, it does sound like there's a little bit of feedback right there. We have another angle. Let's try that one. All right, so this particular feed has no sound right here, but we're going to head back to this angle right here. This is on the side of the White House, so we're going to see if they're able to fix that feed. We're also going to bring in another feed as well, as we do want to hear from Vice President J.D. Vance, but there seems to be an echo on the end of the White House. Let's see if they fixed it.
hundreds of millions of dollars of fraudulent loans that were being handed out through the Small Business Administration that we've identified and stopped. And we've also started investigating some of the fraudulent criminal activity and also prosecuting some of the fraudulent criminal activity. So the thing that I say to the American people, and I'll repeat here to all of you, is, fraud is a crime that has two victims. It has, first of all, the American taxpayer, people who pay their taxes, who out of their generosity, and because they have to, of course, they pay their taxes expecting that it's going to go to pay our troops and ensure that low-income children have access to food and ensure that people get medical benefits even if they're not able to afford a doctor. I think it's a great thing about our country is that we have this generosity of spirit where we take care of one another, but fraud takes that away from us because it steals money from the taxpayer when they pay their taxes, and it also steals money from innocent people who are meant to benefit from these programs but can't when the money runs dry because it's gone to fraudsters instead of the people who benefit from it or should benefit from it. So we're going to keep that work up. The President of the United States has been very clear that he wants us to focus on fraud. He wants us to prosecute the fraudsters, and he wants us to save the American people as much money as we possibly can. So we're going to keep at it. We're very proud of that work, and importantly, very proud of the team who've done an incredible job. And then finally, just to give an update on the Iran negotiation, the Iran situation, I just talked to the president very briefly before I came out here. It's actually a very simple proposition here. There are two options, two pathways we can go down when it comes to the Iran situation. So step back for a little bit. What the President of the United States has said is, number one, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And I think it's important for the American people and all of you to appreciate that when we say that, it's not just that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, it's what would happen if the Iranians did get a nuclear weapon. We know that a lot of nations all across the Gulf would then want their own nuclear weapon, and then a lot of nations all across the world. And what has been a very effective bright spot of American foreign policy really for the last 20 or so years would disappear overnight. If you have every country in the world scrambling to try to get a nuclear weapon, it would make us all much less safe. And Iran would really be the first domino and what would set off a nuclear arms race all over the world. That's very, very bad for the safety of our country. As the father of 3 young kids, I don't want them to inherit a world where 20 additional regimes, half of them very dangerous and very sympathetic to terrorists, have nuclear weapons. We want to keep the number of countries that have nuclear weapons small, and that's why Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, on top of all the other things that we might be worried about, that they themselves could use it, that they could use it in leverage and economic control or economic negotiations. We just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. Now, what we did here is that we effectively degraded their conventional military capability. That has been done. That has been successfully done. You could always do a little bit more, but where we are now is the president has asked us, has told us to aggressively negotiate with the Iranians. Why did I go to Islamabad, Pakistan? Why did I spend, I think, probably 22 hours on a plane going there, 24 hours coming back, and then 21 hours on the ground negotiating with the Iranians? Is because we wanted to show a sign of good faith. The vice president of the United States is willing to cut a deal so long as the Iranians are willing to meet us again on that core issue of never having a nuclear weapon. We think that we've made a lot of progress. We think the Iranians want to make a deal. The President of the United States has asked us to negotiate in good faith, and that's exactly what we've done. So we're in a pretty good spot here, but there's an option B. And the option B is that we could restart the military campaign to continue to prosecute the case, to continue to try to achieve America's objectives. And we could talk a little bit about what that looks like, but that's not what the president wants. And I don't think it's what the Iranians want either. We have an opportunity here, I think, to reset the relationship that has existed between Iran and the United States for 47 years. That's what the president has asked us to do, and that's what we're going to keep on working at. But it takes two to tango. We are not going to have a deal that allows the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. So as the president just told me, we're locked and loaded. We don't want to go down that pathway, but the president is willing and able to go down that pathway if we have to. So with that, I will say thank you all. It's cool to be here. I'm going to give a shout out, of course, to the person I am replacing today, Carolyn Levitt, who hopefully is at home enjoying some time with her beautiful kids. I told Carolyn I would stand in for her today for the White House press briefing on the condition that when Usha has our baby in July, that that she would be vice president for a couple weeks. So thank you, guys. And I actually want to start first with Nick from Breitbart. Nick, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you. Today we saw the president endorse Ken Paxton over John Cornyn in the Texas Senate race. Do you think that sends a message going forward for the next cycle to senators, considering running for re-election, or any MAGA-aligned potential candidates that are considering challenging them?
Well, I'd say a couple things, Nick. First of all, I think the president's very gratified by the response that he's heard from the base and from a lot of voters, I think, who are passionate about Ken Paxton. We think Ken Paxton is going to be a great senator for the people of Texas, but most importantly, a great United States senator who can work on solving the problems that all of us confront as a country together. I've known John Cornyn for a long time, but unfortunately, when it really counted, Ken Paxton was there for the country, was there for the president, and that's why he ultimately earned the president's endorsement. He thinks he's going to be a better senator, thinks he's going to make a better candidate, and so I do think it sends a message, but really not just the endorsement, but one of the things the president has done very effectively, going back 10 years in his leadership of the Republican Party and the country as president of the United States, is he said, I want people who fight for the good. I want people who can't be bought by corporate lobbyists, who can't be bought by Wall Street, who can't be bought by special interests, who are going to go to Washington and fight for the people who actually elected them to those positions. And I think one of the things we've seen in the Republican Party, while I can't say that all of our representatives are perfect or all of our senators are perfect, we have seen a much better crop of talent come into Washington since Donald Trump has been the leader of the party and the leader of the movement. I do think we're going to continue to see that happening. But I think the message that people should take from this is fundamentally, you have got to serve the people who sent you. And if you don't do that, you're going to find yourself out of step with voters or out of step with the president of the United States, and that's not a good place to be politically.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just following up on what you just said, you said that the White House is negotiating with Iran in good faith. I think Americans tend to believe that, but what is it about the Iranian side that you personally have seen where you believe that they are negotiating with us in good faith?
Well, first of all, I'd say it's a very complicated country, and it's a country that I wouldn't pretend that I understand even after as deep as I've been involved in this process from the very beginning. It's a great and proud civilization, amazing people. I obviously have a great Iranian American community here in the United States of America, smart people, very hardworking, and you see some of that in the negotiating team on the other side. You also see some very hardline positions in the negotiating team on the other side, and so I think you see that conflict, the fact that maybe the Iranians aren't themselves quite clear in what direction they want to go to. They also are just a fractured country. So you have the leadership of the country, there's the supreme leader, and there are a lot of officials below the supreme leader that has some influence in the negotiation. It's not sometimes totally clear what the negotiating position of the team is. And I don't know if that's sometimes bad communication, if that's bad faith. I wouldn't pretend to venture a guess there, but I will say with confidence, it's sometimes hard to figure out exactly what it is that the Iranians want to accomplish out of the negotiation. So what we've done is tried to be as clear as possible. What are our red lines? What are the things that we're willing to be accommodating on? And what are the things that we absolutely must have? And as the president has said ad nauseum, and I think I've said it a lot too, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We want to see not just the commitment to not have a nuclear weapon, but the commitment to work with us on a process to ensure that not just now, not just when Donald Trump is president, but years down the road, that the Iranians are not rebuilding that nuclear capability. And that's what we're trying to accomplish in the negotiation. Sorry, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, just for Americans at home, because this has been going on for several weeks now. I think what people just want to know is, do you personally believe that the Iranians will come to a deal? Because we keep seeing this over and over again when they go back and forth.
So do I personally believe it? The honest answer is, how could I possibly know, right? And you negotiate with people, and sometimes you feel like you're making progress, and sometimes you feel like you're not making progress. What I think is that the Iranians want to make a deal. What I think is that the Iranians recognize that a nuclear weapon is the red line for the United States of America, that they've internalized that, but we're not going to know until we're actually putting pen to paper on signing a deal. We've had a lot of drafts, a lot of pieces of paper going going back and forth, but I will not say with confidence that we're going to reach a deal until we're actually signing a negotiated settlement here. And I think that it's ultimately up to the Iranians whether they are willing to meet us, because I think we're certainly doing a good job and we're certainly negotiating in good faith. We're going to have to see what ultimately happens with them. I can't say with confidence because I don't know what's in the mind of the other side. John.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to ask you about that $1.8 billion fund set up, weaponization fund as it's being called. Why should taxpayers be paying to settle a $10 billion lawsuit that was brought by the President of the United States? And should people that attacked the Capitol building and assaulted police officers, should they be eligible? Should they receive money? Should they receive money from this fund?
Well, let me say a couple things about that. First, John, I think in some ways the media has misrepresented what this is actually about. This is about compensating Americans for the lawfare that we saw under the last administration. And by the way, anybody can apply for it. Republicans can apply for it. Democrats can apply for it. As you know, the President of the United States has pardoned a number of Democrats who he felt were actually subject to this lawfare. I mean, if Hunter Biden wants to apply for this particular fund, he is welcome to. It's going to go through a normal process where we vet everything, where we try to identify whether people's claims are actually legitimate. But here's the question. You say, why should taxpayers fund this? Whenever the United States government incurs legal expenses, it pays out those legal expenses. When it's settling a lawsuit, it pays out money to settle that lawsuit. And the question is a dollar of this money going to the Trump administration? No. Is a dollar of this money going to Donald Trump personally? No. Is a dollar of this money going to Donald Trump's family? No. The people that would get the money are people, some of whom have been prosecuted completely disproportionate to any crime they've ever committed. Like, let's just take a couple of examples. Tina Peters is this woman who is about to get out of prison, thanks in large part to the president's good work in Colorado. This is a woman who, at worst, if you believe everything that the prosecutors said about her, committed misdemeanor trespassing, and somebody threw the book at her. This innocent grandmother was going to spend 10 years in prison, completely disproportionate to any misdemeanor trespassing that I've ever seen. Was that fair? No. Is it reasonable for her to get some compensation for the fact that she was treated unfairly? I think the answer is yes. And I think that what we're going to see, hopefully, is the entire country, led by this Department of Justice, turning the page on the lawfare. What I would like to propose, and I think the Democrats, hopefully they're willing to meet us halfway here. I won't hold my breath. But what I would propose is something very simple, that if you are willing to turn the page on Joe Biden's lawfare, why don't we prosecute people? Very simple principle. Why don't we prosecute people who violate the law? Let's not prosecute people because they said the wrong thing or because they had the wrong political candidate or because they had the wrong viewpoint. And I think part of turning the page on that is to actually ensure the real victims of that lawfare receive some compensation. That's what this fund is going to be targeted at. And again, there's going to be a process to ensure that that money is only given to people who have actually, I hate to say earned it, but the people who actually were really mistreated by the previous administration and Department of Justice.
Go ahead. I understand that everybody is eligible to apply for this fund. I mean, you're eligible, but I assume you're not going to apply and you don't think you should get money out of this fund.
Of course.
So isn't it just as easy to say that people that attacked police officers should not get taxpayer money from this fund?
Well, look, John, we're not trying to give money to anybody who attacked a police officer. We're trying to give money, not give money. We're trying to compensate people where the book was thrown at them. They were mistreated by the legal system. Sometimes, we do have, John, in this country, innocent until proven guilty. We do have people who were accused of attacking law enforcement officers. That doesn't mean that we're going to completely ignore some of the claims that they're going to make. We're going to evaluate these things on a case-by-case basis. And if we think that somebody, whatever they were accused of, if we think that somebody was unfairly prosecuted and deserves just compensation, then that's what this fund is going to exist to provide. It's just going to correct a wrong, and I think that's a good thing. And I'd encourage everybody, Democrat, Republican, Independent, let's turn the page on this thing that we did under the last administration where we tried to throw people in prison because they had the wrong politics. Let's throw people in prison who broke the law. I think this fund is is a good part of getting justice for the people who are wrongly treated. Back there, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Just to follow up on that quickly, does that mean that people that were violent, that were convicted, were mistreated? Are you saying that?
Well, you're asking me to comment on hypotheticals and on any number of dozens of cases. Here's the thing. We're going to look at everything case by case. As you know, every single case has its own details. Every single case has, there are things about it that maybe don't meet the eye. We're just going to look at every case by case. That's all I'm saying. I'm not committing to giving anybody money or committing to giving no one money. What I'm committing to is a legal process to review these claims and to make sure that people who are mistreated by their government get a little bit of compensation because of it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Yes, sir. I realize that the pointer finger is not as precise as I thought it was. The guy I have this cheat sheet, but the problem with being 41 years old is I'm blinder than I was a few years ago. So we'll say blue blazer, blue tie. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to ask a quick follow-up on Iran, but first I'd like to ask you about fentanyl. Fentanyl sourced largely from China killed about 403,000 Americans over the past 7 years, according to CDC data. That's one in every 850 Americans who died. White House Counterterrorism Director Sebastian Gorka said last week that China's exports amounted to the targeted killing of Americans and war by other means. Do you agree with that assessment? And what is the Trump administration doing to punish and deter China, especially since the Supreme Court struck down the fentanyl tariffs?
So go ahead and ask the second question, because I'll try to take each question and then I'll try to answer them and then we'll go on. And if you ask two questions, I can only guarantee that I'll answer one. In fact, I'm a politician. Maybe I won't even answer the one that you asked. But I will try at least to answer one question.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear the fentanyl response too, if not today, sometime.
Go ahead.
On Iran, is Russia taking possession of the enriched uranium in Iran a plausible end to the war? And if not, why not?
So first, on the Russia taking possession of the enriched uranium, look, these things are being discussed through negotiation. That is not currently our plan. That has never been our plan. I've seen some reporting on that. I don't know where it comes from, but the president's going to continue to negotiate a deal. So that is not currently the plan of the United States government. The Iranians have not raised it. My sense is that's not something the Iranians would be particularly excited about. And I know the president isn't particularly excited about it either, but who knows? I'm not going to make pre-commitments in a negotiation on any particular topic. On the question of fentanyl, a lot of people have died from fentanyl, absolutely. A lot of it has come from mainland China. We're certainly aware of that. But here's what I'll say. First of all, we've made incredible strides under Donald Trump's leadership to cut down on fentanyl deaths. If you look at the number of people who died in 2026, it's going to be lower than the number who died in 2025, which is way lower than the number who died in 2024. This is one of the things that I think all Americans, we should be celebrating. And I'm certainly proud of the president's leadership for making this possible. We ran, if you remember, in November of 2024 on a very simple idea that a lot of fentanyl came from East Asia. It was smuggled into Central and South America, and then the cartels would bring it into our country, and a lot of our people would get poisoned and killed because of it. We said if you got control of the southern border, we would see a substantial reduction in the number of people who died from fentanyl overdoses in the United States of America, and that is exactly what's happened. Now, yes, the president has raised this with President Xi any number of times. I know it came up during the meeting that they had in China just last week, but it's come up in any number of phone calls. And our sense is that President Xi has been willing to work with us on this. And obviously, we want to continue to ensure that the Chinese work with us as much as possible because we don't want our people to be poisoned. So we'll keep working on that issue with the Chinese. There's been, I think, a big amount of progress that's been made, but of course we can make a lot more progress, and we're certainly going to be committed to doing exactly that. Yeah. White jacket, sorry.
Oh, hey, yeah. Natalie with Washington.
Natalie, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Does the government need to create a new mandatory review process for new AI models, given the concerns about Mythos? And secondly, in a few days, Pope Leo is going to release his encyclical on artificial intelligence. What influence, if any, do you see the Pope's guidance on AI having to broader society?
Open a Chime checking account in 2 minutes, and we'll spot you
Society.
Well, I mean, I think when the Pope issues an encyclical on artificial intelligence, it's going to have some influence. I, of course, don't know how much influence. I don't know exactly what it's going to say. But I think when the leader of the world's largest Christian denomination speaks on an issue like that, it's certainly going to have some influence. And I'm sure it'll contain a lot of insights, some of which I'll probably agree with, some of which I may not. But I think that it's going to be a very, very important document. And I think that, one of the things I always found fascinating about Pope Leo is that he chose the name Leo the 14th, which, of course, is recollecting Leo the 13th. Leo the 13th was the Pope during a period of incredible industrial transformation in the entire world. Of course, that industrial transformation, according to a lot of people, led to the rise of fascism and communism in Europe. I think it was interesting that Leo the 14th chose that name to maybe apply Christian social teaching in a new era with a new technological innovation in the same way that the Industrial Revolution was the technological innovation of its time. So I think it'll be fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading it. My guess is it's going to have a lot of influence. On the question of what our policy is going to be, look, what we're trying to do in the Trump administration is very simple. The president wants us to be pro-innovation. He wants us to win the AI race against all other countries in the world. He recognizes that AI is going to be an important tool, not just for our economy, but for our military. And so he wants to ensure that we are winning that particular race. We also want to make sure that we're protecting people. We're protecting people's data. We're protecting people's privacy. I think with this Mythos release, one of the things that we're very focused on, of course, is whether not necessarily the developers of Mythos, but whether some other bad actor could use Mythos to target various cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So it's something that we're working in a collaborative way with the technology companies, and we're just trying to make sure that the American people are as safe as possible. I'm not going to get ahead of the executive order or any other actions that are going to come out, but we're trying to balance those two things. We want to be pro-innovation. We recognize, artificial intelligence could be great. It could help us find cures to diseases that currently, people are dying from or suffering from. It also does have some downsides, and we're trying to balance that safety against innovation. And we think that we've got the right balance here in the Trump administration, but it's something we're going to have to keep on working on because that's just the nature of these technologies is they certainly change. Let's go. Is that Reagan all the way in the back? Daily Caller? There we go. Okay. I figured out finally how the seating chart works.
I want to ask you about the anti-fraud task force. You previously mentioned that Ilhan Omar seemed to have committed immigration fraud. Do you anticipate an indictment against her, an indictment related to that situation?
Yeah, so Reagan, I don't want to prejudge an investigation. You read the things about Ilhan Omar and about, who she married and whether she didn't marry this person or that person. It certainly seems like something fishy is there, but everybody's entitled to equal justice under the laws. So we're going to investigate it. We're going to take a look at it. If we think that there's a crime, we're going to prosecute that crime. And that's something the Department of Justice is looking at right now.
Mr. Vice President.
Go ahead.
Based on what you've seen during your work on this anti-fraud task force, do you believe anything should change about our immigration or refugee policies to stop fraud in the United States?
Well, yeah. Look, one thing I'd say is that the biggest immigration fraud that existed under the Biden administration, it's not just that they let a flood of people across the southern border. That was obviously a very major problem and something I'm proud of the president for stopping. But it's also that they allowed the asylum and refugee claimant process to become totally fraudulent. And so here's what would happen, right? You would take a person who in normal cases would just be a traditional economic immigrant. Whether you let them into the country or not, they're trying to come because they want a better job, okay? They would come into the country and say that they were fleeing persecution, and they would say that they were an asylum claimant, and then effectively what the Biden administration would do is say, okay, you're an asylee, Go into the interior of the country. Here's a work permit. Maybe come back in 10 or 12 years for your hearing on whether you actually have a legitimate asylum claim. So what did that mean? That meant that person was just completely given amnesty and released into the interior of the country. Well, what if that person was a criminal? What if that person actually had a violent history? We didn't do any of the work necessary to ensure that the people coming into our country claiming to be asylum claimants actually had anything legitimate or anything good in their background. So that is is a serious problem. It is something that we have fixed in the Trump administration, but fundamentally, that loophole, you're going to see sometime in the future, somebody is going to try to exploit that loophole, and it's one of the things that we're very focused on in the Fraud Task Force, is making sure that the people who exploited that loophole are actually prosecuted for it, assuming they committed a crime. Yes. So I don't know your name. You have a beautiful cross necklace, though, so go ahead.
Kara Castronovo from Mental TV. Thank you so
Kara.
much. I have two questions. One of them is going back to the $1.8 billion fund, not to keep beating that, but sadly, Democrat lawmakers are misrepresenting that fund.
I agree.
Yes.
It's a great question.
And sadly, some of the mainstream media doesn't understand the magnitude of the political persecution of J6ers. So if a violent offender like a J6er was still over-sentenced and mistreated, literally some of them were sentenced to 24 years in prison, put in unconstitutional pre-trial detention, literally tortured in cages, wouldn't that person still be able to apply for the fund because of due process? And
this is why we say, just to answer that very briefly, this is why we say we have to evaluate this thing case by case, right? We don't in the United States say that